Hi, this is Emily of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Kim Meyer, the host of Choose to Rise here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Choose to Rise, where we talk about living with positive mindsets, how to increase our confidence, building our faith, and living out our life on purpose. A new show comes out via podcast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And if you want to catch the episode live instead, stop by Public House Media around 6:45 Central Standard Time, Monday, Wednesday, Friday as well. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Choose to Rise. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Throughout history, the course of sports has been shaped by one thing: the fans.
From the moments you never dreamed of,
Abby Wambach has saved the USA's life in this World Cup. Hall, the runner, loose ball, it's good. Gonzaga, the slipper still fits.
To the moments that still give you nightmares.
Behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. He's in. Patriots win the Super Bowl. Brady has his fifth.
through the good and the bad, fans have helped change the games we watch and the players we love.
They may not be the most logical people,
You are a factory of sadness. I'll see you Sunday.
But they know their teams better than anybody.
They'll blow in the ninth.
you may not always see them, but you know where to find them.
After all, there's nothing quite like the view from the cheap seats.
Broadcasting is part of the Public House Media Network.
Grab a chair and enjoy all there is in
The cheap seats.
And welcome to the Cheap Seats. Matt Coyne alongside Keith Haney. Keith, how are you doing today?
Matt, it's a pleasure to be back on. It's been a while. It's been a couple months.
Yeah,
So I'm excited to be back up high in the cheap seats.
Yes, yeah, we're excited to have you back. For our listeners, Keith is actually going to join the rotation of our Tuesday, Friday show. So we are really excited. If you've been an avid listener, you know Keith was originally on the Wednesday show with Max, correct? With Max, Keith?
That's correct.
Yes.
Max and I, we had our battles on air for a couple months there for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, so he was on there, and then you joined Jake and I for a few months there during college football, talking about your endeavors, and now you're back joining the corral of hosts here on the Cheap Seats. And today we are going to get right into it here in just a minute, but we do want to remind you that we are brought to you, made possible by Public House Media. You can listen to us on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, as always, anywhere you get your podcasts, your choice. Find out more about us on publichousemedia.org. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And as always, we have our daily poll question during each show day, which is Tuesdays and Fridays. And again, if you are a longtime listener, if you still haven't figured this out yet, we kind of switch our hosts up. You never know who you're going to get. But today you are stuck with Keith and Matt, and we're excited because Keith, one of my favorite times of the year is opening day, is Major League opening day, which happened yesterday. And Keith, I know we've talked before. Obviously, you're a huge football fan, and I know you're an avid follower of the Cubs, if you want to say that. But I know baseball is one of my favorite sports. But for somebody who isn't even like Keith, somebody out there who's not even an avid baseball fan, do you think opening day at least runs past their mind? Do you think it's one of the most recognized, other than the Super Bowl, one of the most recognized events in sports?
Well, it definitely is. Baseball, a lot of people still consider it, America's favorite pastime. And in many ways it is, because not many sports do you have such a frenzy revolving around the first game of the season, especially in a sport where you play 162 games in a year. And you know, how many people are really going to remember the first game of the season?
Yeah, nobody.
in October. But everybody is so excited about it. I mean, the NHL can start and nobody really notices. The NBA, you know, even with the popularity that the NBA has, the NBA can start with a lot of people, you know, saying on a Wednesday morning, "Oh, did the NBA start the other day?" Yeah, they're out of the preseason and it started. So definitely with football now, with the NFL, with its popularity, with that set aside, you don't get much better than opening day, or now, which the MLB calls it opening week, right?
Yeah, I mean, because, and they still have the opening day, but opening week, because they're not all played on the first day anymore. Right. But yeah, I mean, I take that they call it that because, of course, opening day, you know, of course, if you're opening away, that's not your opening day. So I think that's why they call it opening week, because then eventually you play at home during that first week of the season. But you know, it started back in and I have to do a disclaimer, Keith. I'm not this smart. Some of these stats I can't say that I knew off by hand. So don't think I'm like this statistical genius, because I'm not. But the one thing I did know is the first one was played by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Of course, you know I'm going to know that, Keith. Pittsburgh Pirates and Cincinnati Reds. The current Cincinnati Red organization. 1882 was the first game, and one of the really cool things about this was, Keith, I don't know if you know. I mean, me being a Pirates fan, and of course being in the Central with the Reds, and being semi close to Cincinnati. Cincinnati every year has this. It's called the Findlay Market Parade. It has been going on since 1920, and the town of Cincinnati actually closes down. They have this huge parade for the Reds, and it's just a really cool. I've never been to it, but I know people who have been there. It's this huge, it's like a Super Bowl parade before the season even starts. And I just think there's something really special about that. Like you said, Keith, no other sport really has anything like this. And I just get really excited for opening day.
Well, to say that the town of Cincinnati closes is to assume that Cincinnati has anything going on in the first place.
Very good point. Yeah.
No, it's just a little jab at Cincinnati. But you're absolutely right. Cincinnati and the Reds, I mean, the Reds, you know, regardless of how you feel about them, they're one of the most storied franchises in the sport. And I've been to Great American Ballpark for a game I was actually working it. And so I had a chance to be on the field for a little bit and at field level there. And you know, it was just a normal, probably, you know, Friday night, you know, against the team that nobody really cares about in the middle of the season when the Reds were doing poorly, and the stadium was nuts. So those people in Cincinnati, they go crazy for the Reds.
yeah, and it's one of those things that, like you said, it's a very they're a very storied franchise, and they're starting to get some things together again, and we'll see what happens. But it's just so. And for listeners, if you're not familiar, the reason that, you know, why Cincinnati is they are the first, they're considered the first major league, the first major team ever, from what I understand. So that is why Cincinnati kind of has been dubbed that, because so many people are probably like, well, why not New York? Why not Boston? You know, why not these other places that have much successful franchise? But you know, a few weeks back, we talked about what makes successful franchise or a fan base, and in the Reds' case, clearly, this is something that has kept their franchise alive.
Yeah, well, as long as people care, right, and that's one of the things that you see in baseball, really unlike other sports, unless the sport really has a team that's been great, is loyal fan bases and fan base, like you said, that keep that team alive. And we see so many teams and franchises in the sport of baseball where the fans, whether you're good or bad. I mean, the Red Sox, for example, how terrible were the Red Sox for a while? How terrible were the Cubs for a while? But fans, they always show up, and Cincinnati's one of them. One thing that I find very interesting about opening day is that it's really it's an unofficial holiday. Well, really, in Cincinnati, I guess it is an official holiday, isn't it?
Yeah.
And like a holiday, like any holiday, this kind of goes towards my bias, I guess, against baseball. Like any holiday, you spend a month looking forward to it, and then you finally have that holiday, and then the next day everybody forgets about it.
Yeah, it really, because then, I mean, you start complaining about your team, and then you realize, wait, there's 162 games, or there's 161 games left. So, yeah, it's just, yeah, you're right. It's an interesting thing, and one thing of interest too, along with the Reds, is I never knew this until kind of looking into this, and I'll be honest too, listeners who are big baseball geniuses, I get mixed reviews of the first quote official opening day, because I mean, I see 1882, I see 19. The first pitch was thrown out in 1910 on the first day of the 1910 World Series. William Howard Taft actually threw out the first, so that's what I'm confused about. But Keith, one thing I did not know, and this is maybe your fun fact for the day on top of everything else, is so if someone asks who threw out the first pitch of the year. So who threw out the first pitch of the year? Keith, who do you think that is? Every year, who do you think they say this is the person who threw out the first pitch?
Well, usually the president of the United States always throws out the first pitch, right, to start the season?
Yeah, so yes, normally it is. Only Jimmy Carter and Donald Trump have not thrown out the ceremonial first ball. But whoever throws out the first pitch at the Reds game is considered to throw out the first pitch of the season.
Really? Always the Reds?
Yes, always the Reds. According, now, Wikipedia could always be wrong, but I'm actually looking into this a little bit more, and I looked into this before we went on the air, and then it says that it is considered for generations, opening day has arrived in Cincinnati, blah, 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 blah. And then it goes on to say, for decades, the first pitch of every Major League season officially takes place in Cincinnati. So that's interesting. When
Cincinnati starts the season with a road series, the first pitch technically hasn't been thrown out until possibly a week into the season.
Well, and that's what I'm confused about, because I love that we're doing this. I mean, this is part of the cheap seats. We're a bunch of idiots, but do they start at home every year? And I guess I've never noticed that. If they start at home every single year of the year, or, if they start a home series every year. But either way,
there's no way they can possibly do that.
Yeah, especially with it being in Cincinnati.
Right.
But
I guess if there's one thing for Cincinnati to be the standard of anything, it's first pitches for baseball.
Yeah,
I don't like the city of Cincinnati, if you can't tell.
Well,
so
I'm not. Well, I mean, obviously, with me, I'm not a big fan of. I'm not going to put Ohio down, but Cleveland and Cincinnati are just not. I'm not fans of, clearly. So, but yeah, I don't know if this is completely true. But either way, the Reds have a big, a storied. A lot of history, a lot of tradition on opening day with the Findlay Market Parade. A few other fun things. There was a famous, snowball fight in what was that? I think that was 1907. There was a huge snowball fight that they had to call all the people off the field because of 1907. The Giants had to forfeit 9-0 after rowdy fans were throwing snowballs.
Wow.
Which is interesting. But, with all that said, is there opening day? I know we got the Super Bowl. You talked about how there's really no other, we got the bunting that it's known on all the stadiums have the bunting around it. But other than baseball being the oldest of the four sports, the oldest, Keith, why do you think it's such a big deal? Why do you think opening day to this day, which, let's be honest, out of the four major sports, it's definitely not number one, it's not number two. I don't know if you would put hockey ahead of it now or not, but why is it still such a big deal?
Well,
in your eyes?
Because I think you said it, just because of the history of the thing, right? And that's the one thing that baseball will always have, and one of the reasons why baseball in some aspects refuses to evolve, right? It's because of history. Mm-hmm. And it, like you said, it goes back to Cincinnati and, in the 1800s, and you can track it back from generation to generation to generation that, my dad went to opening day with his dad, and my grandpa. And I think that's exactly what it is. It's the history of the thing. I think it marks the start, obviously, of a season that goes for 9 months, so
yeah,
so it's but really I think it comes down to the history of the thing, and I can be as pessimistic about baseball as sometimes as anybody else, but there's really nothing like, for me, walking into Wrigley Field and hearing the sounds and smelling everything and hearing hearing that first pitch going into the catcher's mitt. So it's a special thing, and I really think it comes down to the history. What do you think?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I think it's a history, but I think another big thing is, in my opinion, it is the most family-friendly sport. That, I would never take my 5-year-old and 3-year-old daughter to a Steelers game, a regular season Steelers game, I'll say that, because it's just not family-friendly. I've been to a game in Cleveland, and I seriously thought I was seriously scared for my life. I would never take to a hockey game. Yeah, I could possibly do that. I could possibly take but baseball, I mean, our family goes to multiple games a year. We went down to Milwaukee last year. We were gifted very generously these tickets that we were 6 rows behind the Pirates dugout when they were in Milwaukee.
Wow.
And we were the only Pirates fan, shocker, and within eyesight. And people were so nice to us. They were taking pictures of our for us, and people were talking to our girls, and they were just having a great time and joking, and I really think that's a big thing, Keith. Is I think it's such a family friendly thing that families. I know many families who they skip school or they skip work and they go on opening day as a family.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't think about that. Do you think the reason why it's such a family-friendly environment is that with so many games, you have less of a rowdy fan really living and dying on every pitch? Because, even if you lose this one, if you lose this afternoon, we still, you still have, over 100 left. So do you think that's part of the reason the family-friendly atmosphere comes from fans being a little more passive at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, because I've been to playoff the 3 years that the Pirates have been in the playoffs, the last 25 years. But I went to a playoff game with my dad, and I would never take my kids to a playoff game because
sure.
It's completely different. Of course, that was the first one I ever went to. I went on, of course, but that was the first playoff game I ever went to, and my dad and I are looking at each other. The last time he went to a playoff game was in 1979 when they made the when they won the World Series, and he's like, "Wow, this is crazy." I mean, we couldn't get over it. So I think you're right. I think people, even though they can get rowdy, I think they understand this is a family-friendly place. You have even going down to the minor leagues. I mean, I joke at minor league games, it's sometimes like a show. I mean, they have, the remote control cars out on the field racing between, and that's even major leagues. They have the pierogi races in Pittsburgh, the sausage races in Milwaukee. You have a lot more interaction, but there's more time for that. In the other sports, there's really not a break, but in baseball, there's a break every, 15, 20 minutes.
Right. And I think at Miller Park they have the kids zone that in one of the concourses where it's like a playhouse and with a jungle gym and everything. And I think the parents, you can get a hot dog, you can maybe get a beer or two, and you can watch your kids play, and that's fulfilling your kids' desire to move around all the time. And you can probably take 20 minutes out of the game to do that, and you come back after an inning and realize that you really didn't miss much, probably too. So yeah. I think that's that definitely plays into it.
Yeah, let's be honest, baseball's not exactly the most entertaining sport. I mean, I love baseball. I love sitting at the park. But part of it is the people watching, is the sounds, is the the stuff that you get with it, singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," which we're going to get to that in a second, and just that fun atmosphere, really, that I don't have to worry about if I go to an away Steelers game. I don't have to worry about, an AFC North rival getting a full beer thrown at my head, or somebody literally threatening to kill me. I don't have to worry about that with the Pirates, which is a nice thing.
Funny you mentioned that. Just a quick side note, I went to a Steelers game this past year. When I was done working, I got to go inside, and I was expecting something, it's the Midwest still, right? Is Pittsburgh considered the Midwest?
I think they're still considered the East, which I've never understood, because then Ohio is the Midwest.
Y'all get mad at each other.
Oh, yeah.
Steelers fans get mad at Steelers. Like the biggest fight I saw when I was, and it was the Steelers versus the Bengals. It was the Ravens. It was the Steelers-Ravens, and the biggest fight I saw was two Steelers fans. And I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, they're a bunch of idiots. And then you have people leaving. Let's not get into that. You have people leaving because they're upset the way the Steelers the organization is. And what are they doing? They're becoming Browns fans. And that's not even a joke. I wish it was. But anyways, so we're gonna head to break here. But Keith, as we're heading out, I actually have the original 1908 "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." So I'm going to play that as we're heading out here. I hope you all enjoyed it. Again, this is from 1908, the original "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack. I don't care if I never get back. Let me root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hi, this is Baxter Colburn, host of the Verse of the Day podcast here on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Verse of the Day, where we take a look at real-world experiences and applications to one Bible verse every Monday through Friday as we get an idea of what it looks like to be a little bit better of a Christian and how we can make this world a better place, one verse at a time. I hope you'll join me every single Monday through Friday right here on Public House Media. And I hope you'll subscribe by going to Apple Podcasts or wherever you find good podcasts as well. Once again, thanks for tuning in to the following broadcast here on Public House Media.
James knew the players by their first names, told the umpire he was wrong all along, good and strong.
And welcome back to the Cheap Seats. Matt Coy alongside Keith Haney. I know this song, for some of you are like, why are you playing this? But Keith, did you know that "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" just wasn't what we sing? Did you know it was about Casey and about them wanting to go out to a ball game?
You know what? I heard that only for the first time last year, so okay. I'm pretty much brand new to it. But yeah, I couldn't believe it when I heard it that it was like a whole story with different versions.
Yeah.
This is absurd. It took me 30 years to realize that.
Yeah, it's well, my like we've been talking about. I was raised. My dad was a huge, still is a huge baseball fan. He could still name the 1960 Pirates World Series lineup, and I mean he's just I always call him the walking almanac of baseball. And so at a young age, I knew that, and just some of the things that we'd be sitting at back to the family thing. I'd be sitting at a game, and we'd be at Three Rivers Stadium, and he'd say, back in '73, this guy did that or this guy did that. And I'm just like, wow, like. And listening to your dad or listening to other people talking about, like you said, Keith, like your dad's dad or my 5 generations have done this. It's just a fun family thing for me, and I think for many people.
Yeah, and for me, one of the fondest memories that I've always had, and this goes beyond opening day, just in baseball in general, is as a kid and still as a grown up, I still get reminded of this. Hanging out outside, in a July, and my dad's in the garage doing something, just with Bob Uecker on the radio. Just growing up with me listening to Bob Uecker on the radio, I'm just, man, that's it was always cool. It was always just a cool feeling hearing Bob Uecker on the radio or something, and you knew it was summer. And you knew baseball was going on. Yeah,
you always had that listening on the radio. You had the roar of the crowd in the background, and whoever's up at 1 and 2 count. It's just you could hear. You knew it was always on, and just that sound of that roaring, not the roaring crowd, but like that white noise of the crowd in the background on the radio. It was just a noise that I'll always remember, and I think. Many people, my wife's family, before we were married, they were not big baseball fans. But with me dating her for even 6 months, I would go over to her parents' house, and her dad would have the radio on, listening to the Pirates game. And he's like, "You got me back into the Pirates again." And it's just, it's easy to get back into it when that's what that's kind of the thing, you get used to that. So so Keith, You've been to opening day games. What's the atmosphere? I think you were telling me off the air that you've been to Wrigley Field for opening day. What's their atmosphere like? What's the difference between an opening day atmosphere and a regular day atmosphere?
Well, I think it's just, I guess it's really just the excitement, and everybody just seems to be at the corner of Clark and Addison when you're for that opening day, and it's always a little cold. You have that wind coming in from Lake Michigan, and it's usually gloomy. So you have, and one of the coolest things is seeing those lights, those big light structures from Wrigley when you're riding in on the red line to the red line Addison stop, and you see just from the top of the corner of those buildings, you see the lights starting to shine from Wrigley, and I think everybody just, your body starts to react. You just know it's opening day, and you cannot walk. They shut down Clark. They shut down all of those streets around Wrigley Field because you just cannot walk in that area. And you have all those college girls that live in Wrigleyville, and they're all wasted by 10 a.m. for whatever reason, because it's opening day.
There's only 161 more games left. It's not a big deal,
Right? It's an excuse. I mean, like any sporting event anywhere, it's an excuse to party. But Wrigleyville, just with the demographic that you have living in that area, people just go absolutely insane, and it can be 45 degrees and windy with a couple of flurries in the air, but but still, for some reason, it feels like summer. So.
Yeah, and that's why this year, with it being such an early opening day, and I'm sure some of our listeners are like, "Well, Matt, technically Seattle and Oakland already played in Tokyo." I know, but that's not considered opening day. That was one of the years that they had, an international opening day. yesterday was considered opening day, and you got these places that it's still in the 30s. My wife and I went one year, and it literally was snowing while we were sitting in our seats. I mean, that's just. But I think that's part of it. I think if you live up north, that's part of opening day. Is like you said, that cold, crisp air. Wearing one of the few games you get to actually wear, winter coats to a baseball game. So it's interesting, but we've talked about it enough. I think we've talked about opening day, a good bit, and obviously with it being yesterday, we're up and running for the baseball season. We're not going to give you our any predictions from Keith and I because we just aren't going to do that. But we do want you to jump onto the Facebook page and for the poll question, which is, we talked about it. Why is opening day such a big deal? What makes it what it is? Is it family? Is it that family-friendly atmosphere? Or is it the history, as Keith was talking about, that history, that generation after generation, which is also ties into family, but that year after year from the 1800s all the way up till now. So make sure you go on and put in your vote or comment below the poll. There's always a comment section if you think it's something else. We'd love to hear from you. But Keith, before we head out today, I always like to do if you remember, I always like to do my let my co-host kind of say one last parting word before we head out for the weekend.
Think about this. Every team that won yesterday is now on pace to win 162 games. And isn't that something?
Yes. Yeah, they will be, maybe for a couple days, they will be undefeated and be the team to beat.
Everybody has a chance.
Yeah, it's a great feeling as a Pirates fan, I'll tell you that. Well, hey, Keith, thanks for joining this on this Friday, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with you in the coming weeks.
Matt, excited about it, excited to be back. The view's never better.
Yes,
right? From the cheap seats, you can't get a better seat in the house, especially when you're with friends.
Yes, yeah. Well, it's been a great show. Thank you all for listening. We'll see you next time here on the Cheap Seats.